You have been trying to control everything, and that effort is quietly destroying your calm. You clutch outcomes like a life raft while waves of anxiety eat you alive. Why do you keep holding what only hurts you? What if release, not mastery of externals, is the real strength? Read on and learn a plain, tested framework to feel lighter, clearer, and truly free. Common illusion. Most people think control equals safety. You have probably spent decades tying your worth to objects, titles, and a script you rehearse in the morning mirror. In work, you chase promotions as if rank will seal your identity. In relationships, you monitor texts like a captain watching a storm, convinced that predictability prevents pain. In daily life, you build rituals that feel protective but are actually cages. The perfect inbox, the airtight calendar, the endless planning. You believe that if you hold tight enough, nothing bad will touch you. Here is the brutal mistake. The tighter you grip, the less life you feel. You clutch a rope that is fraying. A child throws a tantrum. A boss says no, a partner leaves, and suddenly your anchor is a chain that drags you underwater. Think about it. How many years have you already lost to this illusion without noticing? Stoic, psychological truth. The Stoics were surgical about this. Epictetus wrote the first rule: some things are up to us, some things are not. Marcus Aurelius kept reminding himself that externals are indifferent. Virtue is the only true good. Modern psychology echoes this with learned helplessness, reversed, and cognitive reappraisal techniques. When you confuse desires about outcomes with what you can actually choose, you create brittle behavior. Neuroscience shows our amygdala flares at uncertainty, but prefrontal training can reframe perceived threats. The paradox is simple and violent. The more you clutch control over externals, the less control you have over your inner life. The more you surrender to the dichotomy, the greater your command of attention and action. You think control over events gives power. It actually hands power to every variable outside you. The more you stop chasing control outside, the more power you gain inside. Application. Start by practicing the morning dichotomy check. Before your feet hit the floor, name 3 things you can influence and 3 you cannot. Say them aloud. This small ritual shifts your nervous system from reactive to intentional. Next, institute a 5-minute evening journal. List what happened today, mark which items were inside your control, and note your reaction. Read Epictetus aloud once a week. Let the language harden into habit. Use a breathing pattern to puncture urgency. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6, when you feel pulled toward outcomes you cannot manage. In conversations where you feel the need to steer everything, practice 3 seconds of silence before responding. That creates space between impulse and action and lets internal choice govern behavior. For 1 week, set a single experiment. Choose one external outcome you normally obsess over and decide you will do the work but accept any result. Report back to yourself nightly. You will feel lighter the first day, clearer the third, and oddly freer by the end of the week. If you fear loss of motivation, remember, purpose fuels persistence, not illusion. Do the work for reasons you can control, your effort, your honesty, your standards. What if you tried this before your next big meeting or before that hard conversation? What if detaching increased your clarity rather than diminishing your drive? Think about it. Be honest with yourself. If this already hit a nerve, subscribe and stay with me and tell me in the comments what illusion of control drains you the most right now. Tension hook. You have learned to see the difference between what you can and cannot force. But what happens when emotions, not events, are the things you try to control? How do you stop trying to manage your inner weather? Common illusion. Most people think emotions are things to be fixed rather than signals to be understood. You have probably been taught to push down sadness, ignore anger, and chase happiness like a commodity. At work, you hide your anxiety behind humor or overwork. In relationships, you apologize for feeling, or you react explosively and then apologize later, as if emotion is a mistake. In daily life, you swipe for distraction, binge scroll, or numb out with food or screens. You treat feelings like intruders, lock the door and pretend they never came. Here is the brutal mistake. Suppressing emotion is like holding a boiling pot lid with bare hands. The pressure increases until something breaks. Think about it. How many moments of authenticity have you thrown away because you feared feeling? Stoic, psychological truth. Stoics did not deny feeling. They trained response. Marcus Aurelius reflected on the origin of impressions and chose judgment over reflex. Seneca advised examination of fear and grief, not their exile. Modern psychology gives us emotion regulation models. Labeling feelings reduces amygdala activity. Cognitive reappraisal changes the story we tell about events. Emotional responsibility means acknowledging feeling without letting it dictate immediate action. You are not your emotion, you are the observer. This is not numbing, it is mastery. Emotions are informative signals about values, boundaries, and needs. A surge of anger marks a boundary crossing. Anxiety points to perceived threat. Sadness signals loss. The paradox: the more you try to control feelings, the more they control you. The more you practice witnessing them, the greater your agency becomes. Application. Start with naming. When an intense feeling arrives, say to yourself, I notice anger, I notice fear, I notice sadness. Do this aloud if you are alone. This simple labeling reduces intensity and creates cognitive distance. Practice 2-minute breathing before responding when emotional stakes are high. Match your exhale to twice the inhale to calm physiological arousal. Use reflective questions. What story am I telling myself? Is this true right now? What is the action I can take that aligns with my values, not the feeling? Keep an emotional ledger. Once a week, write down a strong emotion, trace its trigger, and note how you responded. Replace instant reaction with a default pause. Count to 6, breathe, and choose. For grief or persistent worry, schedule a lament time 20 minutes twice a week to feel without distraction, then close the book and return to life. You will find that acknowledging feeling frees up energy formerly spent on repression. You will speak with more clarity, decide with less momentum from raw nerves, and relate with more honesty. What if you accepted feeling as a map rather than an enemy? What if your anger led to boundary clarity instead of regret? Think about it. Be honest with yourself. If you know this sensation, keep reading, because the next pillar shows how outcomes outside you react to your inner discipline. Tension hook. You now can witness and reframe emotion, but what if your entire career or identity depends on outcomes you cannot fully control? How do you detach without becoming passive? Common illusion. Most people treat career and status as anchors of identity. You have probably tied self-worth to promotions, followers, income, or recognition. At work, you overperform to avoid being seen as replaceable. You network to manufacture security. You equate salary with validation. In social media life, you count likes like merit badges and wake to algorithms that dictate your mood. You build a life that folds when a title is stripped, a project fails, or a market crashes. Here is the brutal mistake. When identity rests on externals, every setback is existential. Think about the last time a deal fell through or your work went unpraised. How quickly did your stomach drop, your posture slump, your inner voice grow mean? Stoic, psychological truth. Stoicism asks, what is truly yours? Your choices, your intentions, your virtue. Seneca warned against dressing in borrowed plumes. Marcus Aurelius reminds you that you are transient, work is temporary, reputation is fragile. Modern science calls this outcome independence. Decoupling self-esteem from contingencies narrows vulnerability. Self-determination theory explains that internal motivation sustains long-term engagement. External rewards are fickle. The paradox: when you stop measuring value by results outside you, your work becomes purer and the quality rises. Detachment from outcome is not fatalism, it is strategic resilience. You still pursue excellence, but your nervous system no longer collapses when circumstance shifts. Application: begin by defining your core criteria for success that live inside you. Craftsmanship, effort, honesty, curiosity. Write them as non-negotiable standards and post them where you will see them each morning. Before launching any project, state the process goals and outcome possibilities. Commit to exerting effort with integrity regardless of result. Practice a pre-outcome ritual. 30 minutes before a pitch or presentation, recenter with breath, repeat your internal standards, and visualize doing excellent work without clinging to applause. Run weekly outcome audits. Review what you controlled, what you did not, and how you responded. For social media or public work, set exposure windows and metrics only for learning, not self-esteem. If a setback occurs, perform a grief ritual. Name the loss, extract lessons, and outline the next small action. Teach your team to value learning over vanity metrics. You will feel steadier. You will work with clearer purpose. What if losing a title meant learning to lead without it? What if failure refined you rather than ruined you? Think about it. Be honest with yourself. If you have never tested this, how will you know the limits of your courage? Tension. Hook. You can detach from outcomes and anchor in internal standards. But how do you do this when relationships are entangled with expectation and control? Common illusion. Most people try to control relationships to guarantee emotional safety. You have probably negotiated love with conditions. If they love me like this, then I am safe. You keep score, demand predictability, and punish perceived slights with silence or escalation. In friendships, you hedge vulnerability with performance, and in romance, you police messages seeking proof of devotion. You think manipulation, pleading, or withdrawal will make partners behave and keep you secure. Here is the brutal mistake. Relationships built on control are brittle mirrors reflecting your fear. Think about a fight where you demanded explanation, or a text you read until you convinced yourself of betrayal. How often did that compulsion to steer the other person break connection instead of securing it? Stoic psychological truth. Stoics modeled a love that is generous and detached. Seneca advised loving what is present, not clinging to possession. Epictetus taught that others are outside our control. We can only govern our judgments and actions. Attachment theory shows that anxious control breeds distance. Secure attachment arises from consistent self-regulation. The psychological truth is that fear-driven control repels reciprocity. The paradox: by loosening grip on your partner, you often increase their trust. By owning your needs and limits rather than manipulating outcomes, you invite genuine intimacy. You cannot make someone feel a certain way, but you can make space for honesty and set clear boundaries. Application: start by practicing request over demand. When you want change, ask with clarity. Say what you need, not what they must become. Use an internal pause before reacting to perceived slights. Breathe, map the trigger to your value system, and choose a measured response. Adopt a practice of boundary letters. In moments of hurt, write what you need and be ready to discuss it calmly instead of punishing. Schedule relational audits, monthly check-ins, where both parties state needs and limits without blame. Use the empathy rule. Before assuming intent, ask one clarifying question. Practice voluntary discomfort. Allow minor slights without immediate correction to test attachment. For relationships that persistently demand control, map out non-negotiables and be willing to distance. you will find that honesty and steadiness attract steadiness. The less you seek to micromanage feelings, the more you can be present. What if releasing management created greater mutual responsibility? What if love freed you rather than trapped you? Think about it. Be honest with yourself. If your attachments have been cages, how will you learn to stand in the open? Tension hook. You now see how to relate without micromanaging others, but what about the deep cuts? Life deals loss, time and mortality. How do you detach there without becoming hollow? Common illusion. Most people treat time and mortality as distant threats they can postpone worrying about. You have probably lived like life is endless credit. Postpone the talk, delay the reconciliation, assume tomorrow you will be braver. You hoard safety like a shadow, thinking abundance of days will compensate for a lack of depth. In routine, you numb the presence of dying with consumption, busyness, and small anxieties. Here is the brutal mistake. Procrastinating confrontation with mortality steals urgency and meaning. Think about the funeral you did not attend, the apology you kept, the book you always meant to write. How many unmade amends lay like stones in your pockets? Stoic psychological truth. Stoics practiced negative visualization and memento mori for a reason. Seneca advised frequent rehearsals of loss to sharpen life. Marcus Aurelius meditated on the shortness of time. Modern research on mortality salience shows that when people confront finitude, values reorder toward relational and intrinsic goals rather than extrinsic ones. The truth is paradoxical. By repeatedly facing loss, you appreciate present gifts. By accepting impermanence, you invest in what matters. Anxiety about death is natural. The Stoic response is to use anxiety as a guide, not a jailer. When you internalize that everything is temporary, you stop bleeding energy into trivial control and start living with purpose. Application. Begin with negative visualization once a week. Imagine losing a job, a loved one, or a comfort, and note what matters most. Use this to reprioritize actions toward relationships and meaningful work. Create a limited time project. Pick something you want to complete in 3 months and work on it daily as a tribute to finiteness. Practice a daily gratitude ritual at night. Name 3 things that would be gone tomorrow if you woke up without them. Schedule difficult conversations you have postponed. Make them short, clear, and honest. Place a physical memento of mortality where you will see it daily: a stone, a watch, a dried leaf to remind you that time is passing. For grief, permit structured remembrance. Write a letter to the lost person and seal it, or visit a place that anchors the relationship. You will gain urgency and clarity. Trivialities will fall away. What if you treated each morning as a loan you must invest wisely? What if mortality became your engine of meaning rather than your enemy? Think about it. Be honest with yourself. If you have let time slip through your fingers, what would you do differently today? Tension hook. Mortality reframes everything. But how do you turn detachment into a durable muscle, a daily practice that survives stress and temptation? Common illusion. Most people think detachment is a single heroic act or a sudden awakening. You have probably read a line that hit you like a bolt and expected overnight transformation. At first you feel cleansed, but then life returns with the same claws, new anxiety, old habits, the same scripts. You assume willpower alone will suffice and then you burn out. Here is the brutal mistake. Treating detachment as a one-time accomplishment guarantees relapse. Think about the diet you kept for 2 weeks, the meditation streak you broke, the promise to stop reacting that lasted 3 days. How often do you rely on brief epiphanies instead of a system? Stoic psychological truth. Stoicism is a discipline, not a slogan. Marcus used daily self-audits. Epictetus advocated rehearsed responses. Seneca counseled repetition. Modern habit science tells us that repetition in stable contexts forms neural pathways. Cognitive behavioral therapy leverages graded exposure and restructuring to change responses. The truth: lasting detachment is built through systems that reduce friction and reward the right kinds of repetition. The paradox is that freedom requires structure. The more you ritualize detachment, the less you must expend willpower in moments of crisis. Practice with constraint creates liberty. Application: design a week-long system and then expand to months. Start with morning anchoring, 10 minutes of breathing and intention setting to mark what you control today. Add an evening audit, 5 minutes of honest review and a single adjustment to try tomorrow. Create micro-rituals that cue detachment. A specific hand movement, a phrase you say silently, a breathing pattern. Use environmental design. Remove one trigger that amplifies control obsession, mask notifications, or schedule downtime. Employ graded exposure. Deliberately face small losses to build tolerance. Miss a social event. Let an email remain unsent. Accept a minor criticism calmly. Pair accountability with curiosity. Share weekly progress with a friend and ask for evidence rather than praise. Build compensatory habits that replace old reactions. When you feel the urge to control, do 10 deep breaths, walk outside, or write a sentence in your journal. Use monthly tests, pick a real-world stressor, and practice full protocol. For maintenance, create an annual retreat, a weekend, to assess your relationship to control, revise rituals, and recommit. Over time, these practices harden into muscle memory. You will stop needing dramatic willpower. Steadiness becomes default. What if discipline was the conduit to freedom rather than its opposite? Think about it. Be honest with yourself. If you want to be free, you must practice daily, test often, and be ruthless about returning when you fail. If a part of you feels exposed by this, that is a good sign. Take the challenge. Name one ritual you will keep for 30 days and tell someone who will hold you to it. Tension hook. You have systems to build detachment, yet true mastery often requires testing in fire. How will you behave in crisis when everything you practice gets stripped away?